Welcome, friends. Hello. Here we are. It is what's the date today? 9th of February here in New Zealand. It's Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. as per my schedule. Chat with Matt. Here we are. Bright Light Client. No, it's not the Bright Light Client anything. It's just the Bright Light Beings Facebook group. And here we are to share potentially some wisdom, some insight, some candid thoughts potentially, basically with an intent to stimulate some expansive or empowered growth, transformation, helping people change. That's basically what I'm about. That's what Mantara is here to do. Help lubricate the processes of change, help expand out of the contractions that keep us tight and stuck. All those words that get used quite often. Stuck. I feel very stuck. Yeah. Relax. A topic that I'm dealing with in the Mantara Transformation Empowerment Support Community, our subscription community, is relaxation this month. Because we feel that it is a very, I don't like using the word important. Hey, Sister Susie. It's a very beneficial time to relax more at this time. Despite, there's a lot of excitement around, there's a lot of things happening, there's a lot of potential fear, there's a lot of opportunity, but to make use of all of that, right, to allow ourselves to grow through all of these different experiences, the fundamental advice is to relax into it, to relax into this intensity, to relax into these opportunities, to relax into these fears or these emotional uprisings or these discomforts that are arising at this time. And there's plenty of that around. Hey, Sister Jane. Hey, Sister Carolyn and Susie. And I'm sure I saw someone else's name pop through, but that's okay. Facebook's pretty random about who it tells me is joining and who, I can see the counter at the top is different to how many names scroll up the screen, but that's, again, just one of the idiosyncrasies that we deal with. And sometimes it doesn't even show me the comments that people make, which is rather annoying. Hey, Sister Jill. Anywho's, here we are. I don't actually have a question or a request at this stage. Gwenny just popped on and said, I look superb. I have to admit that's not a recent photo. That photo was taken about 2 years ago. No, it's probably 2.5 years ago. It would have been October or September, probably September 2019 in Bali. That's in Bali. Tropical. Frangipanis. So currently, hey Sister Tracy, we are up in the tropics. It's being a little bit wet tropical rather than sunny tropical at the moment where we are. We're at Cooper's Beach in the far north of New Zealand, looking at potentially relocating to this area. So we're looking at property and what our options are in different areas around here. That's quite triggering experience, There's so many unknowns. If you get too intellectually involved with trying to make the quote unquote right decision and look at all of the potentials and all of the, how do we know how things are going to evolve over the next little while on this planet? It's really hard to mentally, logically equate to, be able to predict and thus plan and control. There's that good word, that control word. It's very hard to control how our futures are unfolding at the moment. So, when you're in the midst of making a big decision like we've sold our property where we were. And so now we have many options available to us, and sometimes many options is difficult. It's great, lots of freedom, but we also have to dance with our own insecurities around making quote unquote the wrong decision. Hey, Sister Anne. So that's good practice, right? And practice just getting into our hearts and practice relaxing into trusting that even though it's not obvious just yet how this is going to unfold, that we can trust that it will unfold in a way that is ultimately beneficial, whether or not that involves, or how much discomfort that involves, right? Benefit is not whatever, does not mean there's no discomfort involved. the highest, most beneficial outcome quite often is quite an uncomfortable one, at least at first. That's it. We have to step past our resistances to achieve greatness generally. Not always, but generally. So, hey Sister Susie, what are you saying here? Feeling a bit flat. Yeah, I'm going to read it down here, which I need to just do a refresh on. This will help me ultimately, rather than fighting the screen. Feeling a bit flat, being not so well up and down, and it's looking like we're going to have a dramatic downturn in our financial situation. Yeah, I think financial situations are going to be quite interesting over the next little while. I think, generally there's, a bit of a reset coming in the financial markets, in the real estate markets and in the job markets. I think we're all going to feel the pain of not having as much numbers, quote unquote, currency, what we call money, behind our net worth, quote unquote. What a shit term. Our net worth, our financial net worth. I think many of us are going to have a reduction in that number over the next few years, which is difficult because, again, we equate that to that financial number, that net worth number is equated to security and stability and safety and comfort. It doesn't have to be. I know many people who are very happy and very comfortable with a much smaller number behind their net worth than a lot of other people who are absolutely freaking miserable. So, but it's difficult because we're conditioned to equating our comfort levels and our lifestyle to this number and thinking that we need to at least maintain the number, if not keep growing the number at a certain amount in order to secure our future as we envisage it. And I think we're all going to be challenged into envisaging new futures, different futures, which are potentially more abundantly happy, but less contracted around this number of net worth. Yeah, sometimes that works. Jill said, or you do what I did and sold and bought a new place in less than 2 weeks. Didn't give myself a chance to doubt the decision. Sometimes things flow like that, and the next property shows itself reasonably quickly. But in other times, we're tortured a little bit with that, depending on what serves us the most at the time. We all have different paths to walk, and we're all given different lessons, quote unquote. I don't really like the term lessons, but different opportunities, because that's all they are. These lesson things are just opportunities. Hey, Sister Shelby, different opportunities to grow, to have experiences. And sometimes the experience of not knowing is a very valid one to have. And sometimes the experience of going with the flow and having things align very quickly is also the most beneficial experience to have. There's no judgment either way on what it, quote unquote, should be. The trick is to make the most out of whatever shows up, right? If you're given lemons, make lemonade, etc. Or I just drink lemon juice because it's great, right? But I don't know why lemons are so maligned. It's one of those conspiracies, right? It's one of the healthiest fruit on the planet, right? It's one of the most healing tonics available, and yet it's maligned, in this idea, this saying that if you're given lemons, or this car is a lemon. It's right. This idea that sour is bad and sweet is good. Very interesting conspiracy there to keep us unhealthy, right? This idea that cakes and sweet foods are somehow treats and celebrations. How did that come about? When did that become a normal? Interesting. I haven't actually Googled or researched the origin of sweet food being celebration, but maybe I should. and said, I sold a property and got out of the housing asset experience. Yeah. Again, there can be a lot of FOMO about being out of the housing market. There can be a lot of comfort in being out of the housing market. It just depends on your perspective of the situation. Again, what's important is that we all relax into trust, right? As Susie just wrote, trying not to stress. I trust everything will work out okay for us. This is the point, right? This is the point, as we're sort of dancing with all sorts of potentials here. Huge things are changing in such beneficial ways for our society in general currently. Huge awakening occurring. And that's going to involve a reset in many, many ways. And there's a lot of conjecture around what that means. But ultimately, the more that you can relax into trusting that everything's going to be okay, the more that things will be okay. Because you make them okay. You choose. Okay is a choice. It's not an outcome, right? Okay is not an absolute based on universal terms. These are choices that we get to make. So when we choose to trust that everything will be okay, and then choose that everything is okay, then everything is okay, and we can relax, and thus we can enjoy whatever pleasures, whatever opportunities are arising for us in the moment that they arise. If we're holding our expectations around it has to be a certain way, and then it's showing up not that way, then generally that's going to create suffering, and we're not going to be able to enjoy the current situation that we're in, because it's out of alignment with this expectation that it should be a different way. And as long as we're measuring and comparing our current situation to an expected expectation, then we're at a net deficit, always. So it's best not to, right, have these comparisons. Cane sugar barons rigged it. Yeah. Cane sugar barons rigged it to need their product and then market in the last 50 years. It's all been sweet is good. Dentists behind it, perhaps. Maybe. But yes, definitely there's been a huge conspiracy around sugar. I don't even know how they came to start growing sugar in such a mass market and then realized that it's not a great food. I know I've read of accounts of where they tried to feed sugar to livestock and animals, etc., thinking that it's a high calorific product, right? It should be good for sustaining livestock through winter months and stuff, except all animals that are fed sugar do very poorly on it, including humans, right? And they've done certain horrendous experiences where they actually killed animals feeding them on a sugar diet. And yet it's been marketed to us, and still sugar is a huge product worldwide. And even though it's quite a dirty, again, maybe that's part of the conspiracy. It's such a dirty product to grow. It needs a lot of fertilizers. It needs a lot of care. A lot of chemicals go onto it, which might lead you to understand why things like sugar and cotton, these very, very high input agricultural products, are so prevalent on our society, because they keep the wheels of a lot of other industries turning, the petrochemical and the chemical industries in general, pharmaceutical industries. Very, very interesting. Tracy wrote, we barely work anymore. Yeah, I barely work either. Working's very overrated, right? But that doesn't mean you can't generate income without working, which seems like cheating, but it's not, because we get paid based on the being that we be in the world, not based on what we do. And that is a fundamental shift in mentality that's, I've been working at for the best part of 7 years now. So I happen to love you, said Shelby. That's awesome, Shelby. I'm sure we love you too. And turns to alcohol easily too. That's another thing, Jill. But I was commenting on. I'm just going to open it here because I've lost it already. And that's on silent, so that's great. Yes, so this idea, Tracy said, we barely work anymore, but we always make an effort to believe we have everything we need, and we always do. Don't overthink the details. Exactly. So the more that we can trust that we get paid, that we get supported by the universe for being the most expansive expression of ourself, and keep, quote unquote, working at overcoming our resistance to doing that, the more that the universe will support us in multiple ways, including providing whatever finances we require. Now, I'm not one to, perpetuate the belief that you just lie on the couch, being your most expansive self, if that's possible, and then money just appears in your bank account. We need to create. We need to be, inspired into creating pathways for money to come into our bank accounts or our crypto wallets or our, into our hands in some way, right? We need to open up avenues for that to happen. It's magic happens, but it's you have, if you take one step forward, it takes 10 steps towards you. We have to step past our resistance. We have to step past our resistance to for it all to work out. So the point is to let go of the work that earns us the money is the letting go of our old relationship with money and our old relationship with the concept of work and the old concept of getting paid based on a sacrifice, on an exchange of energy, on a sacrificial exchange of energy. I think we always exchange energy, but that exchange of energy can be based on what we are radiating rather than on what we are physically doing. And so this is big work, right? It's not easy to overcome what we have been so heavily entrenched into, this idea of having to work hard to earn our money, to secure our survival. The idea that we get appreciated based on the sacrifice that we make, on the selflessness that we bring to the situation, on the amount of quote unquote hard work that we do. Society really, really tries to elevate hard workers, and yet we see time and time again that hard workers generally don't prosper. The people who have the most money on this planet seem to be the ones who are cruising through it. They've taken some risks, they've made some big investments, or they're really utilizing their talents, but very few of them are quote unquote working really hard. The grinders, the people who are showing up to jobs that they don't enjoy and quote unquote having to work hard to earn that money, are generally kept reasonably impoverished, right? Reasonably chained to the wheel, where they are grinding away day in, day out, and it's heartbreaking. But unfortunately, that's what society has rigged up at the moment, and that's what is in the process of disintegrating in many ways. But it's difficult because the majority of the people who are still chained to that wheel believe it's the right thing to be doing because that's what they're doing and that's what they've been trained to do, and then they resent anyone who chooses to opt out of that. Rather than being inspired, they tend to resist and make wrong people who show a different way, right? It seems like cheating to not be doing this slavery routine. And so we receive quite a bit of pushback for choosing to cruise through life. It's not really a cruise because most of us are having to deal with our internal stuff as well. But we've chosen to opt out of this sacrificial relationship with having to earn money and are choosing to receive money and finance and abundance in ways that are joyful. It's a difficult pathway. So yeah. It's a difficult pathway, but it's a worthwhile one. And I think, hey, Sister Erina, I am very open to any questions, by the way, as I'm sort of chatting away about our relationship with money and finances and the fact that there is a huge shift going on, and a lot of us who have relied on various metrics for measuring safety and prosperity are going to have a bit of a shake-up around that, I feel, and a bit of a reset around what is important and what is real happiness here, because it certainly, in my opinion, is not tied to the number in the bank account. Although, a lot of people who are impoverished really struggle to find happiness because they're struggling to survive, and that too is a very difficult situation. So finding this medium where we can, achieve a comfortable existence, which then allows us to explore our beingness without, feeling impoverished. Love is all there is, Sister Shelby, but it's far beyond what most humans get stuck in. So yes, I believe very much in love, and I endeavour to be an emanation of loving light. That's our mission, right? To be an expression of love here on the planet, well above, much more expanded beyond this human concept that is quite often conditional in exchange, and very satisfying for egos that are looking for something to make them feel better. Right? Oh, somebody loves me, and then that then somehow overcomes the lack of self-appreciation that they have for themselves, you see. So a lot of people are, quote unquote, very much desiring love and to be loved because it's going to fulfill a need that they're not able to self-fulfill. And that's always an entrapment. When you're in a relationship that is requiring you to experience love in anything external to you, whether it's another person, whether it's a puppy dog, whether it's your career, whether it's your bank account, or whether it's the beach, or even nature, if you are needing to express your love, there's nothing wrong with expressing your love to external objects, things that appear to be separate from you, although that appearance of separation is of course a delusion or an illusion. Ultimately love is a vibration that is emanating from you and then reflects back to you, rather than something that you get from outside of yourself. I missed a bunch of questions as we were going then, or comments at least, maybe not questions. At the moment, the richest people are the ones who get others to do the hard work, and they are management. Should that change? I definitely feel that quote-unquote managers are overpaid, and most of them are pretty inept at what they do anyway, from what I've noticed. Not all, but a lot. And it's certainly what level of contribution are they being? I think the reset is going to move from people getting paid based on what they do to people getting paid based on what they be in the world. And ultimately, people will get paid well or sufficiently when they are being their most expansive self in whatever role they are playing, whether they are collecting the garbage or whether they are managing thousands of people. People will be paid not on what they do, not on their responsibility that they have on their shoulders, but on what level of expression, what level of joy, what level of love, what level of light do they bring to the role that they're doing. That's what I feel. I feel that, we will move, and I know this is a bit of a cliche, but the new currency is basically love. And it's this paper money, this fiat, this construct that we use for exchanging energy will reduce in its role. I don't think it's going to go away in a hurry, but it's not going to be held to such a high level of importance as it is at the moment. At the moment, in our Western society, money is God, right? Money can achieve anything that you want, basically, other than real, true happiness. But anything else, right, you can buy at the moment. and a lot of people will sacrifice incredible amounts of their self in order to get more of this paper, which is perceived to have value based on what it can buy. And so that can change. Susie wrote, whoops, I think though it's a balance of having enough to be comfortable without stressing about how to afford the basics. Yeah, so the point is, Susie, is stressing is your choice, right? People who choose not to stress tend to allow the basics to flow in. And people who do stress about having the basics always find that it's a struggle to achieve the basics. The point that we have to remember is we're at choice as to how much we trust and how much we stress. The point is that when you trust, it tends to show up, and therefore it's easier to trust. And when you stress, it always seems to be a struggle which predominates the stress. It's breaking out of one cycle and developing the other that's the difficulty here. And many of us have been trained into believing lack mentality, which then creates this stress, this uncertainty, and we allow the doubts to predominate, that unless we can be sure that the basics are going to show up, then we're going to worry about that. And unfortunately, that then divorces us from the energy that allows the basics to keep showing up. So it's not about a number in the bank, right? This is the point. This is the point, because if you think it's a number, an income that allows the basics to show up, you sort of get entrapped in that. Awesome, Shelby. I love that you are choosing to walk away from the struggle. Now, the next question, Erina asked, can you talk about identity shifts, ascension, and multi-dimensions? Yeah, that's a big one. Identity shifts. I think we're all have to recognize that identities are shifting, and that it's very natural and normal, and it is actually an evolution rather than some sort of quantum happening. Exactly, Tracy. Tracy wrote, in my studies of manifesting, the frequencies of self-worth attracts abundance. The frequencies of jealousy or judgment over someone else's money can block abundance. Yeah, and basically lack mentality. When we don't feel that we're good enough to have what we need, and then we, create jealousies and resentments of others who seem to get it easily, and we compare ourselves against that, then we get entrapped in this lack mentality, and then struggle to make to find enough to relax, right? We think we need something in order to relax, rather than trusting that as we relax, things flow in. Anyway, coming back to and this, I sort of have to finish it up soon because I do have another call, and I'm supposed to only do half an hour on these things. Supposed to. That's the intent. So, can you talk about identity shifts, ascension, and multi-dimensions? Let's stick to ascension and identity shifts to start with. Our identity is going to keep evolving, which sometimes can feel like a shift because something happens and we get a bit of a quantum step at it. But ultimately, it's an evolution. That is basically part of the ascension process. Ascension fundamentally is the raising of our energy frequency. As that happens, old aspects of ourselves that vibrate at lower levels basically get exposed and become uncomfortable, triggered, and arise to the surface where we can release them. I just got these things on my screen. So that's an uncomfortable process, unfortunately. So the process of ascension generally is a process of purification. Fundamentally, ascension is just our energy rising, but as our energy rises, that basically stimulates a process of purification. So all of the denser stuff gets exposed, the pains and the traumas and the tighter, contracted beliefs about ourselves get exposed and become successively more uncomfortable, so that we really get the choice to stop aligning with them, stop identifying with them. We choose to stop identifying with aspects of ourselves that we now recognize from a higher vibration aren't the true us and aren't beneficial to us, and we develop basically through this process of discomfort, pain, the choice to overcome these old habits, because habits die hard. It's easier for our mind to follow the old neural pathways, to maintain the old personality, persona, identity, because this is habitual, how we've responded in the past. But as it becomes more and more uncomfortable to do that, we choose to change. Our frequency basically inspires us to change. And then we allow a more expansive version of ourselves to show up, right? And this is an ongoing process. There's no completion to this. So hopefully that helps on that part. Multi-dimensions gets a little bit confusing for the human mind, but the fact is we are exploring as a being all sorts of experiences on all sorts of dimensions simultaneously. Everything, past, present, future, different times and places, spaces are existing in the now. It's like a big fat book. All the pages are already written. It's just you get to choose what page you're reading. Of course, it makes sense to us as a human, logically, to read sequentially through the pages, because then the story sort of flows, our life sort of flows. But you, of course, have the opportunity to flick ahead a few chapters and read a different page, or flick back into the past and read a different page. Or this book is quite often like these the books we had as kids, choose your own adventure books. You can read a different timeline, as if you made a different decision in the past, at any time as well. You can flick to any page in this infinitely large book if you so choose. But ultimately, if you get too caught up in that, you can miss the present moment, right, when you're reading different pages. Now, which page is present is ultimately where you're at. And so, are you present in a dream or not? It's a very interesting philosophical question. So, we can be very, very present in any dimension we choose to exist in a moment, in our meditative state or in our dream state or in an astral traveling experience, etc., etc. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. But you did choose on a level, on a soul level, to come and inhabit a physical body that is existing in a physical reality. And so there's many opportunities here to experience things that you can't do so easily or so emphatically when you are traveling into a different dimension. The truth is, when you've dropped this body, when this body dies, you have all sorts of opportunities to travel to all sorts of those dimensions as you wish. So while traveling to different dimensions can be useful to give you context and to give you inspiration and to give you an understanding to do this physical life in an even more expansive way, we have to be mindful that we balance that out and don't get too lost in traveling in other dimensions, and really make the most of being here in the physical. So there's reasons and seasons for traveling, and sometimes we spend more time in meditative states or traveling states or dream states than others. Sometimes it's beneficial to do so, and other times it's more important to really be anchored in the physical and present. And of course we can fluctuate between the two. It can be, from hour to hour, those reasons and seasons can change. And some people can do it very effectively, where they can access different dimensions quite intently and with intention and intensely, right? And be very, very present when they're back in their bodies and very, very grounded. But other people tend to struggle a bit and be much more, when they're in their body, they don't really come back in properly, and so they've sort of got a foot in both worlds, and they it's very easy to get messed up. A lot of people then get open to a lot of psychic interference when they're sort of playing in that realm, and that can be uncomfortable and somewhat detrimental to their human experience as well. So it's a fascinating subject, and it's a big subject, and there's no one size fits all. It is, there's no rightness in dimensional travel or dimensional understanding. You can live a very, very spiritual life without dabbling in that side at all, and being very, very present in your human condition, but very, very expansive in your heart, and living a human life from a very bright loving space and energy. And that doesn't mean that that's the right way to live a human life, but it is an option. And of course, other people can spend a lot of time dabbling in the other dimensions and the more esoteric world, and still live a very grounded spiritual life as well as a human. So there are options. This is the amazing thing about this realm, is that we have so many options to play in, and so it's fun. So yeah, Shelby said, so friggin' hell, I'm having trouble reading. Erin said, yes, I have been travelling, so interested. Yeah, awesome, Shelby. Yeah, just pick your favourite page, but also remember that you're here on this planet as well, in a body, and what's showing up in the external world is a real opportunity to have this physical experience, which is, oh God, real part of the human experience, and why we've bothered to go through such discomfort of the polarity and the intensity of incarnating into a physical body to start with, because we can have a lot of those types of experiences in other realms, in other lifetimes, but you chose to be here, so that's what's important. Erina says, it feels like I'm gone for a long time, but it must take an instant in human time, a lot of grounding. Yeah, exactly. So Jill wrote, I guess it's what experience you have signed on to have. I tend not to be too fatalistic in thinking, oh, well, that's what I've signed up for. I think we're all at choice in current moments. And while we may have made agreements to certain situations that will show up in our life, I don't think we get to change some things that are going to show up. I think we always get to change what attitude or what interaction we're having with the situations that are showing up. I don't think we sign up to a certain mentality or a certain mode of operation. So I'm always one to encourage people to make constant choice, right? And if you're not liking what's showing up or the way that you're currently interacting with it, not to think, oh, well, that's what I've signed up for, but to choose to be a different way with what you are currently experiencing, knowing that what you are being is going to influence what shows up in your future, So it's how you choose to interact with the world currently is what's influencing how your future shows to you. And while you may have made agreements before you incarnated to have certain, experiences and situations, and they may still show up, the attitude with which you go into those experiences is going to, change dramatically how you experience the situation. Your perspective towards it is everything, and that is very much in a constant flux of change and choice, the perspective that you are maintaining. So never forget that, right? I'm always encouraging people not to get too caught up in, this idea of, oh, I've signed up for that. And that's how it is, and that's how it's going to be, because I've already made that decision and now I just have to live with it. You are always at choice, and while you can't necessarily change a situation, absolutely, you can definitely change your relationship with that situation. Shelby said, I'm not very interested in being what I'm not. That is a very interesting comment, because I think we're all being what we're not. Because none of us really know who we are. It's a constant evolution, right? It's a constant evolution of refining this thing of me, I, what I am. And so I think we're all being what we are not, to some degree. We're all being fragments and filaments and influences from our past, our history. And so this I'm interested in everything. I'm interested in what I'm not. I'm interested in being what I'm not, and I'm interested in the evolution into more of who I be. And I get what you mean, though, right? When you're not interested in being false and fake and pretentious, in an obvious way. which many people do on this planet to impress others, etc., etc. But as we sort of expand our awareness, we start to recognize that we're all being false in many ways, because we're all acting from influences that are left in our field. So it gets very non-absolute, right? We get very much out of the polarity of yes and no. Am I being true or am I being false? We're all being false, and we all have elements of truth. There's no absolute in these. We're all dancing in the grey. So it's cool. Awesome, my friends. I will leave it there because I have another call in about 10 minutes. Much love to you. Keep shining bright. Keep choosing to relax, right? This is going to be an intense time. There's all sorts of shit that's about to unfold on the planet in multiple ways, both internally for us, and then within our smaller, closer relationships, and then within the more expansive community and societal relationships. There's a lot of stuff in the process of unfolding and changing. It is going to be very unsettling. It is going to be reasonably easy to get stressed out and fearful. So you've been warned. That's not that you need to be scared of it. It's just that you need to double down on your practices that help you relax into being confident in yourself that whatever's unfolding is going to unfold ultimately for your best outcome. And the more that you can relax into that, the more that you can keep breathing, the more that you can stay expansive, the more that you'll be intuitively led through what is unfolding in ways that is quite magical and allows you to enjoy this process, despite the fact that it will be uncomfortable in many ways for our smaller egoic self that has relied on structures and stabilities to help us feel safe. We have to start feeling safe in our own heart, not safe in some sort of external structure that promises to look after us if we do the right thing. That's the guts of it. So it's big learning, it's big opportunities, and it's going to be interesting to say the least. Anyway, friends, much love. I'll speak to you again next week. Hopefully, it will be the morning our retreat starts, so it might be a little bit haphazard, but my intent is to be here at this stage. We'll just see how the day unfolds. I might have to change it slightly. We'll see. But for now, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to just ask, reach out. You can either send me an email or just reach out to me in this group. We're here to serve. Bye for now.